20. Worst black nymphomaniacs of the 1970s in Hollywood. What if we told you that some of the most respected black icons of the 1970s weren't just breaking box office records? They were also breaking hearts at a dizzying pace. Behind the glamour fame and trailblazing roles lay secret affairs, multiple marriages and scandals Hollywood tried to bury. These legends weren't just stars. They were uncontrollable forces of passion. Buckle up, because we're diving into the untold love lives of 20 black celebrities who redefined desire in the wildest decade ever. Ready for the truth? Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This is Legends of Black Excellence, and it's about to get real. Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier, born February 20th, 1927 in Miami, Florida, rose from humble beginnings in the Bahamas to become a cinematic trailblazer. Breaking through with his commanding performance in No Way Out 1950, Poitier went on to shatter Hollywood's racial ceiling, becoming the first black man to win the Academy Award for Best Actor with Lilies of the Field in 1964. Yet behind the curtain of respectability lay a complex romantic life that quietly fueled tabloid whispers during his reign. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Poitier's off-screen entanglements often rivaled his most gripping performances. While married to Juanita Hardy, his first wife and mother of 4 daughters, he became involved in a passionate and highly publicized relationship with actress Diahann Carroll. Their nearly decade-long affair was fraught with emotional turbulent secrecy and the tension of maintaining separate public lives. Carroll later revealed in interviews that Poitier promised marriage, but ultimately couldn't follow through, leading to a painful end. In 1976, he married Canadian actress Joanna Shimkus, with whom he had 2 more daughters. This union was long-lasting and publicly stable, yet the earlier chapters of his love life lingered in the public memory, reminding fans that even dignified legends wrestled with emotional contradictions. Though never associated with wild behavior, Poitier's private life was far from austere. He navigated romantic choices with a quiet intensity, often balancing duty, career, and emotional conflict. In a time when black actors were hyper-scrutinized, he projected grace, but his heart wandered more than many knew. Sidney Poitier's story is not that of a reckless seducer, but of a man caught between history-making responsibilities and the yearning for intimacy. His relationships were quieter than most, but no less significant in shaping the legacy of a man who changed Hollywood forever. Diana Ross. Diana Ross, born March 26, 1944 in Detroit, Michigan, was far more than a vocal powerhouse. She was a cultural force who lived her personal life with the same intensity as her musical career. Rising to stardom as the glamorous frontwoman of the Supremes, Ross quickly became a solo sensation in the 1970s, captivating the world with her stage presence and soulful ballads. Yet behind the sequins and spotlight, she lived a complex and emotionally rich romantic saga. Her long-term relationship with Motown founder Berry Gordy in the late 60s blended professional ambition with personal passion. Their bond resulted in the birth of her first child, Rhonda, though they parted ways before the child was born. Ross went on to marry music executive Arna Ness Jr. in 1985, with whom she had 2 sons. Their union was high-profile and lasted until 2000, a notable stretch amid her whirlwind lifestyle. Ross's dating history also included links to high-powered figures such as Gene Simmons and Richard Gere, and a rumored liaison with Marvin Gaye. She and Billy D. Williams were long rumored to share an intimate connection fueled by their electric on-screen chemistry in Mahogany, 1975. Known for her emotional intensity and need for deep connection, Diana's relationships often unfolded in the glare of media scrutiny. Despite the heartbreaks, she remained committed to love, never hiding her vulnerability. While she never identified with the label of a nymphomaniac, her history of high-profile, often overlapping romances painted a picture of a woman unafraid to follow her heart. Ross's legacy isn't defined by scandal, but by passion. She loved deeply, publicly, and unapologetically, refusing to choose between her destiny and her desires. In many ways, she embodied the 1970s spirit, bold, sensual, and entirely unforgettable. Richard Pryor, born December 1st, 1940, in Peoria, Illinois. Richard Pryor channeled his tumultuous upbringing into comedic brilliance. Behind the laughter, however, was a man who lived a stormy, pleasure-chasing life filled with chaos, vulnerability, and romantic upheaval. With 7 marriages to 5 different women and numerous affairs in between, Pryor's love life was as explosive as his stage performances. In the 1970s, his relationship with actress Pam Grier drew national attention. Their bond was passionate but turbulent, marked by emotional highs and drug-fueled lows. Grier later recounted that Pryor was a man both brilliant and broken, capable of intense affection, but haunted by self-destruction. Their romance unraveled under the weight of his addiction and infidelity. Pryor's marital history includes names like Jennifer Lee, whom he married twice, and Flynn Belaine, also a repeat spouse. He fathered 7 children each from different relationships and often struggled to balance love with responsibility. Though he loved deeply, Pryor rarely loved sustainably. His affairs were numerous, and his appetites extended beyond women. He openly acknowledged past experiences with men, challenging societal norms and Hollywood's expectations. His raw honesty, both on stage and off, made him a trailblazer, even when the truth was uncomfortable. Richard's relationships were often mirrors of his mental and emotional state, chaotic, passionate, and filled with longing. His nymphomaniac reputation wasn't just about quantity. It was about an insatiable need to feel, connect, and escape. In an era where sexual freedom surged and restraint waned, Pryor embodied that reckless pursuit. His genius was undeniable, but so was his self-sabotage. Even in love, he was both a provocateur and a wounded soul, too brilliant to ignore, too broken to fully heal. Billy Dee Williams, born on April 6, 1937 in New York City. Billy Dee Williams became the embodiment of suave masculinity during the 1970s. With his rich baritone voice, striking features, and unmatched charm, he earned fame not only for his roles in Lady Sings the Blues (1972) and Mahogany (1975) alongside Diana Ross, but also for his portrayal of Lando Calrissian in the Star Wars franchise. Yet while his on-screen presence exuded cool sophistication, his off-screen romances added layers of intrigue to his persona. Williams' romantic history included multiple marriages, most notably to model Teruko Nakagami in 1972, with whom he had a son, Corey. Their union lasted over 2 decades before ending in divorce in 1993. However, it was his numerous affairs with actresses, singers, and models that fed the rumors of his notorious bedroom charisma. Marlene Clark and even Cicely Tyson were among the women linked to his name, sparking headlines throughout the decade. Known for his irresistible charm, Williams rarely addressed his personal relationships publicly, preferring to let gossip swirl. His carefully curated image, part gentleman, part ladies' man, left many wondering where the truth ended and the legend began. Friends often described him as a romantic who thrived on attention, craving emotional validation as much as physical connection. While not as scandal-ridden as some contemporaries, his name was constantly whispered in social circles as someone with an insatiable appetite for companionship. Williams never seemed to settle for long, moving from one high-profile affair to another, always on his own terms. He represented the polished side of the sexual revolution, smooth, discreet, yet quietly relentless. In a decade dominated by unfiltered desire, Billy Dee Williams danced through it all with a velvet touch and a reputation that refused to fade. Pam Grier. Pam Grier, born May 26, 1949 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, broke every mold Hollywood tried to force upon black women. Known as the undisputed queen of blaxploitation films, Grier exploded onto the scene in the early 1970s with commanding performances in Coffee (1973) and Foxy Brown (1974). Her fierce independence and stunning beauty turned her into both a sex symbol and a feminist icon. But behind the bold characters was a woman navigating an intensely emotional and high-profile love life. Greer never married, yet her list of famous lovers read like a who's who of black male stardom. Her relationship with comedian Richard Pryor was passionate, toxic, and painfully public. She stood by him through drug binges and breakdowns, even as the romance nearly destroyed her emotionally. She also dated NBA legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who infamously gave her an ultimatum to convert to Islam or walk away. She chose to walk. Another significant relationship was with actor and comedian Freddie Prinze. Their time together was marked by affection, but also by the looming shadow of Prince's mental health issues, which ended tragically in his suicide. Greer's openness about these heartbreaks later served to humanize her image beyond the screen. Her sexual confidence and refusal to be tamed made her a controversial figure, but also a trailblazer. She wasn't seeking chaos, she was demanding freedom. Greer once confessed that being with powerful men often meant navigating control, expectation, and ego, but she never let any man define her. Pam Grier's romantic history wasn't about promiscuity, it was about ownership of her body and her story. In a decade of sexual revolution, she stood tall as a woman who embraced pleasure, demanded respect, and broke every rule written for her. James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones, born January 17, 1931 in Arcaboutla, Mississippi, was a commanding presence in American entertainment. Known for his thunderous voice and imposing gravitas, he became a theatrical legend with landmark performances in The Great White Hope 1970, voicing Darth Vader in Star Wars and Mufasa in The Lion King. While his career radiated authority and distinction, his personal life unfolded more discreetly, but not without intrigue. Jones married actress Julienne Marie in 1968, a union that lasted 4 years. Their separation in 1972 was quiet, but insiders described the marriage as strained by career pressures and distance. A decade later, he wed actress Cecilia Hart in 1982. Their relationship endured until Hart's passing in 2016 and was often praised for its stability and mutual respect. Together they had one son, Flynn Earl Jones. Although never known for scandal, Jones acknowledged the difficulty of balancing relationships with the demands of stage and screen. A man of immense emotional depth, he found it challenging to remain fully present in love while immersing himself in complex roles. Friends noted that he had occasional flings during his bachelor years, often with fellow performers, but avoided public entanglements that might tarnish his professional reputation. In a decade when many stars flaunted their exploits, Jones chose dignity and distance, offering little to gossip columns. Still, those close to him revealed that behind the stoic demeanor was a sensitive soul who craved companionship even if he struggled to sustain it. James Earl Jones exemplified a quieter version of the 1970s romantic archetype, introspective, disciplined, yet undeniably human. His romantic life may not have grabbed headlines, but it added a textured dimension to a man whose voice commanded galaxies, but whose heart beat in deliberate, measured rhythm. Lena Horne. Born June 30th, 1917 in Brooklyn, New York. Lena Horne was a singer, actress, and civil rights champion who lived boldly in both art and love. Her career ignited in the 1940s with performances at the Cotton Club and breakout film roles in Stormy Weather and Cabin in the Sky. By the 1970s, she had evolved into a matriarchal figure in black entertainment, but her personal life remained as captivating as her career. Horne's most controversial relationship was her 1947 marriage to white MGM music director Lenny Hayton. Interracial marriages were rare and risky at the time, and though they remained together until his death in 1971, their union endured immense social pressure. Hayton often passed as ethnic in public settings to protect their privacy. Together they had 2 children, and their commitment endured decades despite racial and industry tension. Beyond Hayton, Horne was rumored to have had emotional and possibly romantic connections with notable men. including jazz composer Harold Arlen and political figures sympathetic to civil rights causes. She kept most of her relationships shielded from public scrutiny, but those who knew her well spoke of a woman whose desires and emotions were as rich as her voice. Lena was far from a passive participant in love. She embraced intimacy on her own terms, often choosing partners who understood her need for both independence and depth. While never overtly scandalous, her romantic history reflected defiance of convention and refusal to let society dictate her choices. She wasn't a woman of excess, but of intention. Lena Horne loved fiercely and strategically, always balancing her personal needs with a larger mission. In a time when most women were told to stay silent, she dared to sing, speak, and love with elegance, and left no apologies behind. Ben Vereen. Ben Vereen, born October 10, 1946 in Laurinburg, North Carolina, dazzled audiences with his unparalleled ability to sing, act, and dance. By the early 1970s, he was a Broadway sensation, earning a Tony Award for Pippin in 1973. His fame soared even higher with his role as Chicken George in the groundbreaking miniseries Roots 1977, cementing his legacy in American entertainment. Yet behind his theatrical brilliance was a romantic history riddled with complexity, controversy, and personal demons. Vereen married Andrea Townsley in the 1960s, and the two had a daughter. The marriage eventually ended, and later he wed Nancy Bruner, with whom he had 4 children. However, Vereen's reputation as a faithful partner came under fire when reports of infidelity surfaced during his marriage. He admitted publicly to multiple affairs, expressing regret and acknowledging the toll they took on his family. As his fame grew, so did his struggles with substance abuse, which often intertwined with his relationship troubles. In 1992, a near-fatal car accident left Vereen with serious injuries, forcing a spiritual and emotional reckoning. He later spoke openly about his failures in love, describing his need for validation and the emotional instability fame amplified. Vereen's relationships with co-stars and dancers were often passionate, short-lived, and shadowed by internal conflict. Despite his public charm, those closest to him saw a man driven by need both for affection and for escape. His romantic past wasn't tabloid gold by design, but it frequently became so due to his inability to maintain boundaries in emotionally charged environments. In many ways, Ben Vereen's love life mirrored his performances, electric, intense, and at times overwhelming. He remains a revered artist, but his offstage choices offer a sobering look at how success can magnify temptation and how passion without discipline can leave lasting scars. Ernie Hudson. Ernie Hudson, born December 17, 1945 in Benton Harbor, Michigan, brought strength and sincerity to every role he touched. Before becoming widely recognized for his role as Winston Zeddemore in Ghostbusters 1984, Hudson spent the 1970s building his career through theater and television. But while his acting work was gaining momentum, his personal life quietly unfolded in ways that surprised many who saw him as the calm, grounded figure of the screen. Hudson married his first wife, Jeannie Moore, in 1963. They had 2 sons, but the couple divorced as his career demands grew and their paths diverged. In 1985, he married Linda Kingsburg, with whom he had 2 more children. Their union has stood the test of time, but Hudson has spoken about the challenges of maintaining healthy relationships amid professional pressure. Though never one to chase the spotlight with his love life, Hudson reportedly had several intense relationships between marriages, often with fellow actors or women he met through the industry. Unlike the more flamboyant stars of his era, Hudson kept his affairs low-key, but those close to him described a man with a magnetic presence, humble, yet undeniably alluring. His romantic history was not riddled with scandal, but rather marked by quiet emotional complexity. He often struggled to balance the need for family with the unpredictable rhythm of a rising Hollywood career. The 1970s, with its blurred boundaries and cultural shifts, tested his capacity for long-term commitment. While Ernie Hudson's name rarely dominated gossip columns, his relationships left an impression on those around him. He represents a different kind of nymphomaniac figure, not reckless but emotionally needy, chasing connection in a world of constant disconnection. In the end, his story reminds us that even the quietest hearts can beat the loudest behind closed doors. Sherman Hemsley. Sherman Hemsley, born February 1st, 1938 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, became a television icon thanks to his unforgettable role as George Jefferson on The Jeffersons, 1975 to 1985. With his trademark swagger, high-pitched voice, and comedic genius, Hemsley shattered stereotypes by portraying a wealthy, sharp-tongued black businessman during a time when such characters were rare. But while America laughed at his on-screen antics, very few ever got a glimpse into his deeply guarded private life. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Hemsley never married, never had children, and never paraded partners in front of cameras. Though often rumored to be romantically linked to co-stars and industry insiders, he kept all such matters behind closed doors. Some speculated that he lived with a longtime partner for decades, but he never confirmed or denied any such relationship publicly. Friends and colleagues described him as warm yet fiercely private, preferring solitude over Hollywood socializing. Hemsley's aversion to publicity extended beyond romance. He rarely gave interviews, avoided red carpets, and spent much of his post-Jefferson's life away from the spotlight. Yet those close to him claimed he had a vibrant, complex emotional world that didn't fit neatly into public expectations. He was rumored to have had several discreet, long-term relationships, mostly with people outside the entertainment industry. His enigmatic lifestyle fueled speculation, but Sherman Hemsley never offered explanations. He defied the typical image of a 1970s Hollywood star with wild affairs and multiple divorces. Instead, his secrecy became his own form of rebellion, a silent refusal to be consumed by the era's sensationalism. Hemsley passed away in 2012, leaving behind a legacy not just of laughter, but of mystery. His life proved that true intimacy doesn't always require headlines, and sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones never told. Lawrence Fishburne. Lawrence Fishburne, born July 30th, 1961 in Augusta, Georgia, was barely a teenager when he stepped into the spotlight. By 14, he had landed a role in Apocalypse Now 1979, setting the stage for a career that would span decades and cement him as one of the most intense and cerebral actors of his generation. But behind the gravitas he brought to films like Boys in the Hood and What's Love Got to Do with It was a personal life far more spontaneous and emotionally reactive. Fishburne's first marriage was to actress Hodgna O. Moss in 1985, with whom he had 2 children, including actress Montana Fishburne. Though their marriage ended in 1990, it was marked by artistic collaboration and moments of public affection. However, as his star rose, so did the frequency of behind-the-scenes rumors about passionate flings with co-stars and models. In 2002, he married actress Gina Torres, and the couple welcomed a daughter together. Their high-profile union exuded sophistication, but they quietly separated in 2017 after 15 years, reportedly due to differences in lifestyle and emotional compatibility. During their split, tabloids linked Fishburne to several women, though he refrained from addressing gossip publicly. Known for his intellectual depth and serious demeanor, Fishburne paradoxically sought excitement in love. Friends often described him as deeply emotional, someone who threw himself fully into relationships, sometimes without caution. His romantic history reflects both an ache for meaningful connection and a tendency to fall into impulsive attachments. While not tabloid bait in the traditional sense, Fishburne's relationships were often intense, short-lived, and driven by emotional urgency. He wasn't a hedonist, he was a seeker. In the fiery landscape of 1970s and 80s, Hollywood Fishburne stood out as a man who loved fiercely, thought deeply, and carried every scar into his next role. Nina Simone. Nina Simone, born February 21, 1933 in Tryon, North Carolina, was a once-in-a-generation musical powerhouse whose brilliance was matched only by her tempestuous personal life. A classically trained pianist turned civil rights crusader, Simone poured her soul into haunting tracks like Mississippi Goddamn and I Put a Spell on You. But behind the raw emotion of her music lay a deeply volatile romantic history marked by trauma, rebellion, and unrelenting intensity. Her first marriage to New York police detective turned manager Andrew Stroud began in 1961. The relationship was both professionally pivotal and personally devastating. Stroud was physically abusive, controlling and emotionally manipulative, a dark shadow over her most productive years. Despite their collaboration producing major success, Simone eventually escaped the toxic union after enduring years of torment. They had one daughter, Lisa Simone, who would later speak out about the generational scars left behind. After Stroud, Simone explored relationships with artists, activists, and fellow revolutionaries during her years in exile in Liberia, Switzerland, and France. These affairs were rarely publicized, but were often fueled by ideological passion as much as attraction. Simone sought intensity, romantic or otherwise, and often clashed with partners who couldn't match her emotional voltage. In later interviews, she admitted to craving love, but distrusting it. Her mental health battles, including bipolar disorder, further complicated her capacity to maintain stability in her relationships. Yet even in chaos, Simone's love life was never aimless. She demanded truth, challenged norms, and refused submission in any form. Nina Simone's legacy in love mirrors her artistry, bold, unfiltered, and impossible to tame. She didn't love for comfort, she loved for transformation. Her romantic scars became part of her voice, and through it, the world heard a woman who bled brilliance into everything she touched, including the people she dared to love. Ruby Dee. Ruby Dee, born October 27, 1922 in Cleveland, Ohio, wasn't just a titan of stage and screen, she was a living testament to love, activism, and artistic excellence. Celebrated for her riveting performances in A Raisin in the Sun and American Gangster, Dee also made history off-screen through a marriage that was anything but ordinary. She met fellow actor and activist Ossie Davis in the 1940s, and they married in 1948. Over the next 57 years, the couple became symbols of enduring Black love, publicly united in civil rights marches, film collaborations, and social justice causes. But behind the romantic image was a relationship founded on radical honesty and emotional transparency. In their joint autobiography, With Ossie and Ruby, the couple famously revealed they had an open marriage during the height of their careers. The idea wasn't born of sexual indulgence, but of philosophical alignment. Both believed love should be based on mutual respect and truth, not social convention or possessiveness. While they acknowledged that such openness brought challenges, it also deepened their bond and mutual understanding. Ruby Dee was known for her intellectual intensity and emotional generosity. She reportedly had romantic interactions outside her marriage, but these were never exploitative or tabloid-driven. Instead, they reflected her lifelong quest to understand connection in its many forms, romantic, political, and spiritual. Her love life was not defined by quantity, but by quality of intention. Dee explored relationships as a form of self-discovery, never shrinking from complexity. Her approach to intimacy was an extension of her activism, bold, unapologetic, and human. Ruby Dee's story shatters the mold of the typical nymphomaniac narrative. She didn't chase thrill, she sought truth. Her relationships, like her roles, were layered, powerful, and deeply rooted in her commitment to authenticity and liberation. Al Freeman Jr. Al Freeman Jr., born March 21, 1934 in San Antonio, Texas, was a master of his craft, earning praise for his nuanced performances on stage and screen. Best known for his commanding portrayal of Elijah Muhammad in Malcolm X 1992, and his groundbreaking Emmy-winning role on One Life to Live, the first for a Black man in a daytime drama, Freeman was an intellectual force who brought dignity and depth to every character. Yet in stark contrast to his public achievements, his private life was shrouded in mystery. Unlike many of his contemporaries in the 1970s, Freeman avoided the glitzy party circuit and kept his romantic affairs far from the public eye. He was married, fathered 2 children, and largely maintained a low profile regarding his personal relationships. While his marriage was described by those close to him as enduring whispers within the industry, suggested he had romantic liaisons during his theater years, particularly while teaching and directing in New York's Black Arts movement. Peers noted his intensity in both professional and personal circles. Some actresses and students spoke of a magnetic presence, thoughtful, soft-spoken, but emotionally complex. He reportedly engaged in a few private affairs that never reached the gossip pages, not out of guilt, but because he so fiercely valued privacy. Freeman's romantic narrative doesn't carry the sensationalism that marks others on this list, but his inner world hinted at layered desires that occasionally complicated his otherwise stoic demeanor. He explored connection not through flamboyance but through cerebral engagement and spiritual resonance. In an era driven by publicized passion, Al Freeman Jr. existed in the margins, a romantic enigma whose love life, while quieter, reflected a man of substance and private longing. His legacy remains grounded in discipline, but perhaps softened by the secrets only those closest to him ever knew. Jimmy Walker. Jimmy Walker, born June 25, 1947 in Brooklyn, New York, rose to fame playing the unforgettable J.J. Evans on the sitcom Good Times, 1974 to 1979. His catchphrase, "Dynamite," became a national phenomenon, and his comedic persona, equal parts outrageous and lovable, catapulted him into TV stardom. But off-screen, Walker lived a life that was just as animated, especially when it came to romance. Walker has never married and openly admitted to being wary of traditional commitment. In multiple interviews over the decades, he boasted of dating thousands of women, claims that raised eyebrows but also became part of his brand. He described his romantic experiences as varied and constant, often involving fans, co-stars, and women from the Hollywood social scene. Though he maintained a humorous tone when discussing it, many believed his escapades were far from exaggerated. Despite his bachelor status, Walker had several rumored relationships with famous women, including Ann Coulter, though both denied anything serious. In the 1970s, during Good Times' peak, Walker became a fixture at nightclubs and celebrity events, often seen with different dates and little intention of settling down. His unapologetic approach to love was controversial. Some admired his honesty, others criticized his detachment. Walker himself admitted he found emotional intimacy difficult, often preferring fleeting fun over long-term connection. While he wasn't known for public scandals, his avoidance of monogamy and his large reported number of partners earned him a reputation that fits the nymphomaniac label in spirit, if not pathology. Jimmy Walker lived like his character, impulsive, eccentric, and larger than life. In a decade defined by sexual freedom, he didn't just participate, he embodied it. His legacy is one of humor, contradiction, and a relentless pursuit of pleasure unanchored by traditional boundaries or societal expectations. Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes, born August 20th, 1942 in Covington, Tennessee, was more than a musician. He was a movement. With his deep baritone voice, signature shaved head, and gold chains, Hayes revolutionized soul music with albums like Hot Buttered Soul and his Oscar-winning theme from Shaft 1971. Yet as groundbreaking as his music was, his personal life was equally unforgettable, marked by intensity, multiple marriages, and a staggering number of children. Hayes was married 4 times and fathered 12 children, a fact that made headlines as much as his artistic achievements. His romantic history included women from various walks of life, and his relationships often overlapped, leading to complex family dynamics. Those close to him described Hayes as charismatic, emotionally generous but easily distracted by new attractions. Throughout the 1970s, his fame soared, and so did his visibility as a sex symbol. Fans adored him not just for his music, but for his bold, sensual presence. Hayes leaned into that image, becoming a fixture in celebrity circles and romantic rumor mills. From relationships with background singers to industry insiders, he developed a reputation for passionate flings that sometimes turned serious and sometimes imploded quickly. Despite the chaos, Hayes was never known for cruelty. His partners often spoke of him as warm and supportive, if not entirely faithful. He struggled to balance his commitments to family with his powerful cravings for intimacy and validation. That duality defined his romantic legacy. In an era where sexual freedom was celebrated, Isaac Hayes didn't just observe the cultural shift, he embodied it. His music and lifestyle exuded sensuality, confidence, and a refusal to apologize for who he was. For many, he remains the epitome of 1970s soul, saturated with rhythm, pulsing with desire, and impossible to contain. Richard Roundtree. Richard Roundtree, born July 9, 1942 in New Rochelle, New York, kicked down Hollywood's racial barriers with a leather trench coat and unmatched swagger. As the star of Shaft 1971, Roundtree redefined what a black male hero could look like: cool, confident, and sexually empowered. But his off-screen persona mirrored that cinematic bravado, making him one of the decade's most notorious heartbreakers. Roundtree was married twice and had 5 children, but those marriages told only part of the story. In the 1970s, while enjoying peak fame, he became a magnet for romantic attention. He dated actresses, models, and admirers from around the globe, often engaging in overlapping affairs that fed Hollywood's gossip circuit. His relationships were fueled by the era's cultural shifts when black masculinity was being redefined and newly celebrated. Roundtree became a symbol of that movement, exuding power, but also indulging in emotional recklessness. Women were drawn to his confidence, but many described a man who struggled with commitment and often left emotional wreckage behind. Still, he was not viewed as malicious. Friends and partners noted that Roundtree had a sensitive side, one that emerged in private, but was rarely seen in public. His desire for intimacy clashed with his fame-fueled lifestyle, leading to a pattern of deep beginnings and abrupt endings. In later years, he reflected more openly about his flaws, especially after surviving a battle with breast cancer, which offered him a sense of perspective and vulnerability. Richard Roundtree wasn't just a character on screen, he was a force of personality in real life. His legacy isn't simply about being the first black action hero, it's also about the price of being that symbol. He lived fast, loved hard, and left a mark not just on Hollywood, but on every heart he touched along the way. Cicely Tyson. Cicely Tyson, born December 19, 1924 in Harlem, New York, was the embodiment of grace, intellect, and strength. With a career spanning 7 decades, Tyson broke barriers in film, television, and theater by portraying strong, complex black women in a time when such roles were rare. From Sounder 1972 to the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, 1974, her work became synonymous with excellence and integrity. But even the most elegant icons are not immune to emotional turmoil, and her love life proved it. Tyson was romantically linked to several influential men throughout her life, but her most public and controversial relationship was with legendary jazz trumpeter Miles Davis. They married in 1981 after years of an on-again, off-again courtship that began in the late 1960s. Their union was a combustible mix of passion and pain. Davis, known for his musical genius and volatile temperament, struggled with infidelity and substance abuse, and Tyson often found herself caught between devotion and despair. Though she tried to shield their relationship from the media, the couple's ups and downs were no secret to insiders. Tyson reportedly walked away from the marriage in 1988, citing emotional distress and irreconcilable differences. Despite the heartbreak, she maintained a respectful silence for years, choosing dignity over scandal. Throughout the 1970s, Tyson was also admired from afar by many powerful men in entertainment and politics, but she remained selective and guarded. For her, romance was not about fame or power. It was about shared values and emotional safety, something she rarely found in her partners. Cicely Tyson's love life was not promiscuous, but it was deeply human. She loved deeply, suffered privately, and carried herself with unwavering poise. Her romantic scars added depth to her artistry, and like everything she touched, they became part of a legacy rooted in resilience and truth. Rosalind Cash. Rosalind Cash, Born December 31st, 1938, in Atlantic City, New Jersey, was a powerhouse actress who carried herself with dignity, mystery, and quiet fire. Best known for her performance opposite Charlton Heston in The Omega Man, 1971, and for roles in General Hospital, The Cosby Show, and Roots. The Next Generations. Cash was a dynamic presence in an industry that often failed to fully appreciate her depth. And much like her acting style, her romantic life was filled with complexity, intense, yet deliberately hidden from view. Cash never married, and she was famously private about her personal affairs. Throughout the 1970s, she was rumored to have been involved with several prominent actors and musicians, but none of her relationships were ever confirmed publicly. Unlike her peers who embraced the glitz of red carpet romances, Cash preferred discretion, choosing to build genuine, if fleeting, emotional connections far from public scrutiny. Colleagues described her as deeply sensual but guarded, someone who valued passion but feared exposure. She was known to retreat from relationships the moment they threatened her independence or inner peace. That emotional self-preservation often left lovers bewildered, but it kept her grounded in an industry that devoured vulnerability. Her decision to avoid marriage and motherhood was viewed as radical during her time. But for Cash, it was an act of self-sovereignty. She believed love should never demand silence or sacrifice her ambitions. Her choices were not about celibacy, but about control her body, her heart, her narrative. Rosalind Cash's name may not have graced tabloids, but she lived a love life on her own terms, selective, soulful, and unapologetically free. In the sexually charged decade of the 70s, she was a quiet nymph of the night, never boastful, never careless, but always unforgettable to those who got close. They shattered stereotypes, rewrote Hollywood's rules, and lived love lives as bold as their talents. But were these stars simply free spirits of a liberated era? Or did they cross lines that blurred passion and obsession? From public heartbreaks to secret affairs, their stories invite admiration, judgment, and endless debate. Now it's your turn. Were they victims of fame or masters of their own desires? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more untold truths on legends of Black excellence. The spotlight fades, but the questions still burn.